When milk changed the world by the Middle Ages, milk was no longer simply a source of nutrition. It had become a foundation of economies, a symbol of wealth, and a necessity for survival across much of Europe, Asia, and Africa. Yet while farmers continued to improve their herds and cheesemakers perfected their craft, a new force was quietly transforming the world: trade. For thousands of years, dairy products had remained local. Fresh milk spoiled within hours. Even butter melted during long journeys. Only hard cheeses, fermented milk, and clarified butter could survive extended travel. As trade routes expanded, these preserved dairy products became valuable commodities. Merchants carried aged cheeses across the Alps. Camel caravans transported clarified butter through the Middle East. Ships loaded with barrels of butter crossed the Baltic Sea. Food was no longer limited by geography. Milk had entered the global economy. One of the greatest trading networks was the Silk Road, stretching more than 6,000 kilometers from East Asia to the Mediterranean. It connected hundreds of cultures that had previously lived in relative isolation. Most people imagine silk, spices, gold, and precious stones moving along these routes, but ideas traveled just as quickly. So did food. Travelers exchanged methods for making yogurt, preserving butter, fermenting mare's milk, and aging cheese. Recipes crossed mountains long before written cookbooks existed. A merchant might leave Persia carrying one kind of cheese and return months later, with an entirely different technique learned in Central Asia. Food evolved because people moved. In Europe, monasteries became unexpected centers of innovation. Monks were responsible not only for preserving religious texts but also for improving agriculture. Many monasteries owned large herds of cattle. They carefully documented breeding methods, seasonal feeding, and dairy production. Over generations, they refined cheeses that are still famous today. Some of Europe's oldest cheese-making traditions began behind monastery walls. In Switzerland, mountain communities developed hard cheeses that could survive entire winters. In France, local climates produced completely different flavors using the same milk. In Italy, aging techniques created cheeses capable of lasting for years. Geography itself became an ingredient. Different grasses changed the flavor of milk. Different bacteria created unique aromas. Even the caves where cheese matured influenced the final taste. No two regions produced exactly the same result. Meanwhile, another revolution was taking place in Northern Europe: selective breeding. Ancient farmers had unknowingly practiced it for thousands of years. Now they became increasingly deliberate. The strongest oxen pulled plows. The healthiest cows produced more milk. The calmest animals reproduced more often. Generation after generation, cattle slowly changed. By the late Middle Ages, dairy cows were producing far more milk than their wild ancestors ever could. Humanity had reshaped another species through centuries of careful selection. Yet despite these advances, life on a medieval farm remained difficult. Milk spoiled quickly. Winter feed was limited. Disease could wipe out entire herds. One harsh season could destroy years of work. Many villages survived only because dairy products could be preserved. Cheese became emergency food. Butter stored precious calories. Fermented milk remained safe to drink when fresh water became contaminated. For millions of people, dairy meant survival. Around this time, another myth became widespread. Many believed drinking warm milk before sleep possessed magical healing powers. Modern science tells a more balanced story. Warm milk may provide comfort and contains small amounts of nutrients involved in sleep regulation, but its calming effect is largely psychological and part of a relaxing bedtime routine, rather than a miracle cure. Another popular belief claimed that milk increased physical strength by itself, while dairy supplies protein and essential nutrients. Strength comes from proper nutrition combined with physical activity. Milk alone has never created great warriors. Training has. As Europe approached the Renaissance, cities expanded rapidly. Populations increased. Demand for food exploded. Small village farms could no longer feed growing urban centers. Agriculture had to change, and with it, the history of milk was about to enter its most dangerous chapter. Fresh milk would soon become one of the deadliest foods in rapidly growing cities. A crisis was coming that would force humanity to completely rethink the way milk was produced, transported, and consumed. The milk crisis. By the 18th century, the world was changing faster than ever before. Cities were growing at an extraordinary pace. Factories replaced farms. Millions of people left the countryside in search of work, creating enormous urban centers unlike anything humanity had seen before. But while industry modernized almost everything, one essential food remained trapped in the past: milk. For thousands of years, people drank milk close to where it was produced. A cow was milked in the morning. The milk was consumed the same day. Distance had never been a serious problem. Now everything was different. Families living in crowded cities no longer owned livestock. Fresh milk had to travel dozens, sometimes hundreds, of kilometers before reaching consumers. Without refrigeration, this created a disaster. Milk spoiled rapidly. During the hot summer months, dangerous bacteria multiplied within hours. Many merchants tried to hide spoiled milk by mixing it with water, flour, chalk, or even harmful chemicals to improve its appearance. The result looked fresh. It was anything but safe. Children suffered the most. Throughout Europe and North America, contaminated milk became one of the leading causes of illness among infants. Parents had no idea why perfectly white milk could suddenly become deadly. The danger was invisible. Doctors blamed bad air. Some blamed poor weather. Others believed disease appeared spontaneously. No one understood the microscopic world living inside every drop of raw milk. One of the darkest chapters unfolded during the 19th century in New York City. Thousands of cows were kept beside whiskey distilleries. Instead of grazing on fresh grass, they were fed the hot, fermented grain left over after alcohol production. The animals became weak, malnourished, and sick. Their milk was thin, bluish, and often contaminated. Rather than throwing it away, dishonest producers added starch, flour, plaster, and other substances to make it appear rich and creamy. This became known as swill milk. It was sold across the city, especially to poor families who could not afford healthier alternatives. The consequences were devastating. Historians estimate that thousands of children died from diseases linked to contaminated milk. During this period, public outrage slowly forced governments to investigate. Newspapers published shocking illustrations showing filthy urban dairies. Citizens demanded change. For the first time, food safety became a matter of public policy. Yet the greatest breakthrough came not from politics. It came from science. In the mid-19th century, a French chemist named Louis Pasteur began studying why wine and beer spoiled. His experiments revealed something revolutionary. Tiny living microorganisms far too small for the human eye to see were responsible for fermentation and many forms of food spoilage. More importantly, some microorganisms cause disease. This idea challenged centuries of medical belief. If invisible microbes contaminated food, perhaps they could be destroyed before making people sick. Pasteur discovered that heating liquids to a carefully controlled temperature for a short period dramatically reduced harmful bacteria without ruining the product. The process eventually became known as pasteurization. At first, many people resisted the idea. Some claimed heated milk tasted different. Others believed it destroyed all nutritional value. A few even insisted it was unnatural. These arguments sound familiar even today. Modern research tells a different story. Pasteurization destroys dangerous pathogens, while preserving nearly all of milk's important nutrients. It became one of the greatest public health advances in history. As pasteurization spread across Europe and North America, deaths caused by contaminated milk declined dramatically. Milk was becoming safer than ever before. Technology continued moving forward. Mechanical cream separators increased efficiency. Glass bottles replaced many open containers. Railroads allowed fresh milk to reach distant cities more quickly. Then refrigeration changed everything. For the first time, milk could remain fresh for days instead of hours. Dairy farms grew larger. Transportation networks expanded. Milk transformed from a local product into an international industry. By the early 20th century, governments introduced health inspections, sanitation laws, and quality standards. Veterinarians monitored herd health. Factories tested milk before it reached consumers. Food safety became part of everyday life. But myths about milk never disappeared. One persistent belief claimed that raw milk was always healthier because it was natural. History tells a different story. Before pasteurization, diseases such as tuberculosis, brucellosis, typhoid fever, and severe bacterial infections spread through contaminated dairy products, claiming countless lives. Nature was not always safe. Another popular myth suggested that modern milk contained no nutrients because of industrial processing. Scientific studies consistently show that properly processed milk remains an excellent source of protein, calcium, vitamin B12, riboflavin, and several other essential nutrients. Processing changed milk. It did not eliminate its nutritional value. By the middle of the 20th century, dairy had become one of the world's most consumed foods. Advertisements promoted it as the perfect drink. Governments encouraged children to drink it every day. Schools served milk during lunch. Entire generations grew up believing that every person needed dairy to stay healthy. But science was still evolving. New discoveries would soon challenge many assumptions that had been accepted for decades. The greatest debate in the history of milk was only just beginning. The future of milk. For thousands of years, milk helped humans survive. It nourished the first farming villages. It sustained nomadic tribes crossing endless grasslands. It fed growing cities. It supported armies, kingdoms, and empires. Few foods have traveled such an extraordinary journey. But in the 21st century, milk faces a challenge unlike any before. For the first time in history, millions of people are asking whether we still need it at all. Supermarket shelves now look very different from those of just a generation ago. Alongside traditional dairy products stand cartons labeled oat, soy, almond, coconut, rice, and pea milk. Technically, most of them are not milk at all. They are plant-based beverages designed to imitate the taste and texture of dairy. Their popularity has grown rapidly, driven by changing diets, environmental concerns, lactose intolerance, and personal preferences. This has sparked one of the biggest debates in modern nutrition. Supporters of dairy point to its impressive nutritional profile. Milk naturally contains complete protein, calcium, phosphorus, vitamin B12, potassium, and several other essential nutrients. For children and many adults, it remains a convenient and affordable source of balanced nutrition. Supporters of plant-based alternatives argue that these beverages often require fewer natural resources to produce and offer suitable options for people who cannot digest lactose or simply choose not to consume animal products. The truth is that neither side tells the whole story. No single food can determine a person's health. A balanced diet depends on many factors, including genetics, lifestyle, physical activity, sleep, and overall nutrition. Milk is not a miracle food, but neither is it the villain that some headlines claim. One of the most common myths today is that every adult is lactose intolerant. This simply is not true. Around 2/3 of the world's population lose much of their ability to digest lactose after childhood, but that still leaves hundreds of millions of adults who digest fresh milk perfectly well. Whether someone tolerates dairy depends largely on genetics rather than personal strength or habit. Another popular myth claims that humans are the only species that drinks another animal's milk. Therefore, it must be unnatural. While the statement itself is true, the conclusion is misleading. Humans are also the only species that cooks food, builds cities, flies airplanes, writes books, and sends spacecraft beyond the solar system. Human history has always been defined by behaviors that exist nowhere else in nature. Milk is simply one example of our remarkable ability to adapt. Modern science continues revealing new chapters of this story. Genetic research allows scientists to trace ancient migrations through DNA preserved inside human skeletons. Chemical analysis of pottery can identify milk fats absorbed into clay vessels over 7,000 years ago. Archaeologists are even reconstructing the diets of prehistoric communities by examining microscopic residues trapped inside ancient tools. Every year, new discoveries refine our understanding of how dairy shaped civilization. Perhaps the greatest lesson is not about milk itself. It is about adaptation. Human beings never stop changing. We changed the landscape. We domesticated wild animals. We transformed dangerous oryx into gentle dairy cattle. Then those animals changed us in return. A tiny genetic mutation spread through entire populations. Culture influenced biology. Biology influenced history. History reshaped civilization. Very few everyday foods can claim to have altered the course of human evolution. Milk is one of them. The next time you pour milk into your coffee, add cheese to a meal, or walk past the dairy aisle in a supermarket, remember that you are looking at the result of a partnership thousands of years in the making. A story that began with prehistoric hunters watching wild cattle from a distance, continued through the first farmers of the Neolithic Revolution, crossed the vast Eurasian steppe with nomadic herders, built civilizations along the Nile, the Tigris, and the Indus, survived medieval winters, overcame deadly epidemics through science, and continues to evolve today. History is often remembered through kings, battles, and empires, but sometimes, the greatest revolutions begin with something as ordinary as a single glass of milk. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next journey into history. Because the past is full of stories hidden in the most ordinary things. The end.